For many Chassidim, going to the Ohel, to the Rebbe's resting place, is similar to going into Yechidus. Those who had private audience with the Rebbe, one-on-one, experience the same thing when they go to the Ohel. Although going to the resting place of any tzaddik is holy and helpful, but there's something special and important about going to the tzaddik who was responsible for this generation. There's a story about the Berditchever Rebbe who said, before he passed away, that he would not go into Gan Eden until he convinced the heavenly courts to send Mashiach, to bring Mashiach. But he was near Gan Eden, and he heard that they were saying Kedusha, and he couldn't resist, and he jumped in. That's the way the story goes. The Rebbe said about the Frierdiker Rebbe that he said that he would not do that he would not go in until Mashiach comes. There's also the expression that a shepherd does not abandon his flock. So that a Rebbe is still committed and connected to his people even after he passes away, because certain tzaddikim are in the category of shepherds, which is a unique role even among tzaddikim, that a shepherd, that kind of a tzaddik, that kind of a nasi, that kind of a leader, doesn't abandon his flock ever. There's also, of course, the statement of the Zohar that when a tzaddik passes away, he is more present or more available in this world than before. So what does all this mean? Gan Eden is not a place, it's a condition. It's a state of being, which means it's a pleasure. The neshama experiences a certain kind of pleasure. And pleasure is almost synonymous with life. So there's life in this world, and there's life in the world, in heaven, in the world to come. That means that there's a pleasure of the physical existence, and there's a pleasure in soul existence, neshama existence, which is Gan Eden. To go from this world to the next world, you have to go through a very intense transformation. And only those who can distance themselves from the memory of the pleasure of this world can really appreciate the pleasures of the next world. So there's a transition where you have to erase the old tapes in order to appreciate the new tapes. In fact, even going from one Gan Eden to another, which are just degrees of pleasure, you have to go through another cleansing process to remove whatever trace of memory of that original pleasure of this world in order to fully appreciate the pleasures of heaven, of Gan Eden. So what does it mean that the Berditchever said that he won't go into Gan Eden? It's not a place you go into. He meant, I will refuse the pleasures of the world of heaven and remain committed to what's happening here on earth. There's also a story, I don't know exactly who it's said about, that people came to his resting place, to his kever, and cried about problems, pogroms, whatever. And they were told later, somebody was told in a dream from this tzaddik who was buried there, that they can't ask him about these things anymore because he can't relate to it. From his perspective, he sees only good. So he can't empathize with their problem because he has a completely different, which means he made the transition from the pleasures, the legitimate pleasures of this world to the pleasures of the heavenly existence. So the Berditchever said, I will refuse the pleasures of Gan Eden, of heaven, and remain committed to. But when he got close to that pleasure, it was so irresistible, it was so compelling that he couldn't resist. A shepherd is a different kind of a tzaddik, a different kind of a leader. The shepherd is so committed to the purpose of creation in the first place, the dira b'tachtenim, that God's desire, God's taiva, which was to be revealed in this world, on earth, becomes so much the tzaddik's desire, that the pleasure or the need to see godliness revealed in this world is so much his essence, is so much him, that the pleasures of the next world don't even appeal. They can't compete. So if you're completely committed, thoroughly committed to what God's plan was, to his taiva, is also your taiva. So just as God doesn't enjoy heaven more than he enjoys earth, but finds earth more fulfilling, more satisfying, the same is true with the tzaddik, that the pleasures, whatever they are, of heaven, which we can't even imagine, whatever they are, they don't compete with the pleasure of seeing godliness revealed on earth, of a dira b'tachtenim. So every step, every improvement of the dira b'tachtenim is a greater, much greater pleasure than whatever pleasure heaven has to offer. And so when the Frierdiker Rebbe said he's not going to go, it doesn't mean he's not going to travel, he's not going to cross the border. It means he's not interested. His commitment to dira b'tachtenim is so complete and so deep that the pleasures of Olam Haba, of Gan Eden, can't compete. Now the Rebbe said in the Maimah, the last Maimah that he gave out, the Rebbe said that this is true of every Jew if we could get to the bottom, to the core of who we are. That at our very core, we cannot be satisfied. In fact, we can't even tolerate the fact that godliness is still not revealed in this world, or that there is some part of the world, or some place, or some part of God that is not yet revealed. There's no Beis HaMikdash, whatever is still missing because we're in Golus. So that even if you have spiritual pleasures, you love learning, you love serving God, you love doing mitzvahs, it would shatter ganzen Zutresel, the Jew, if he knew what his true desires were. So that no Jew can be satisfied with Gan Eden, if you're talking about the real essence of the neshama. It is in the nature of every Jew that we desire what he desires, what God desires. And his desire is adira b'tachtenim, that he should be revealed and known and appreciated in every part of the world. And that becomes the neshama's taiva, because it's a chelek elokah. So the truth is that the Jew who goes to the Ohel, to the Rebbe, who is so committed to the dira b'tachtenim that Gan Eden has no appeal, is not even an option. And the Jew himself, in his neshama, wants nothing more. Doesn't want, not he doesn't want anything else, but there's nothing he wants more than the dira b'tachtenim, to see God's plan fulfilled. When these two neshamas come together at the Ohel, it is yechidus. It's yechidus, and it's in its highest level. And then you can accomplish amazing things, and you can come away a different person. So, although it's great to go to the resting place of any tzaddik, of ancient tzaddikim, but the tzaddik of this generation, who still feels responsible for you and for the condition of the world, and his greatest pleasure is to see you succeed in making a dira b'tachtenim, that connection, that conversation is much more personal, much more immediate and relevant than with any other tzaddik. It's a very common experience that children, adult children, who don't pay much attention to their parent, father, mother, it's just not important. When the parent passes away, all of a sudden, what would he have wanted becomes very significant. He wouldn't have wanted this, he would have wanted that, he always wanted this, he never wanted that. How come you never paid attention to this while he was alive? But when he passes away, all of a sudden, what he stood for and what he represented and what he meant and what he wanted becomes the most important, most significant thing. In that sense, when we have a person who's alive, there are many things we notice or don't notice about the person. Not necessarily his core, not necessarily his essence. When a person passes away and the physical stuff is removed, then what's left in our connection, in our relationship, in our bond, is the real substance. And that's why the focus becomes, what was he about? What did he stand for? What did he represent? What did he believe in? What was he committed to? And so you say, whatever he wanted to accomplish, I'll finish it for him. I'll pick up where he left off. Why didn't you do this while he was alive? So it could be, while he was alive, he was doing it. Like, fine, you're doing it, do it. So a connection between two people, when they're physical, is not the purest. There are things that separate you, there are things that get in the way, there are things you don't agree on. When a person passes away, things become clear. And you can only see the core issues. To be connected to the Rebbe means, in essence, what did he stand for? What did he want? I want the same thing. What was his goal? What was he trying to achieve? I want to further that. I want to participate in that. I want to be part of that. You hear people today who never knew the Rebbe, never saw the Rebbe, and they read a Maimer or a Sicha, they hear what the Rebbe did, and they often say it. I regret I never saw him. I could have. I was in New York. I could have. A certain year I was there. I could have. I didn't. I never got to see him. And they regret it. They feel terrible that they missed the opportunity. So on the one hand, you feel bad for them. Yeah, you could have seen. You could have gotten $1. On the other hand, you feel a little envious. They never saw the Rebbe, and look how they feel. Look how they're reacting. Because they knew what he stood for. They knew what he meant. They knew what he wanted. They knew what he accomplished. And they fell in love with it. So it is enviable that they got right to the core. They got right to the essence. They got right to the substance of it. So I always love this story. I heard it from somebody who knew the Rogatchover. He says the Rogatchover would sit and learn, and his favorite, of course, was the Rambam. And he would sit and learn Rambam, and he would, dig deep to see the deeper meaning of what the Rambam was alluding to, and so on. And when he would get it, and it was really like an exciting insight, and he would say, the Rogatchover would say to the Rambam, he would say, "Oy Rebbe, lang sollst du leben." Like, you should live long and be well. And this was, of course, long after the Rambam had passed away. That kind of a personal love affair that comes from a meeting of minds. That is the most respectable kind of love, the most perfect kind of love. It's like, wow, you knew that? You said that? It is the deepest connection that two people can actually have. So learning what the Rebbe says, joining the Rebbe's projects, participating in his objective, that is a very real, maybe the most real bonding or connection that two people can have. So in today's world, when you're inspired by the Rebbe's objectives, he wanted to change the world. that excites you, that inspires you, then you made a connection. He wanted to bring godliness to every corner of the world. That inspires you, you have a connection. He wanted to reach every Jew. There was no Jew he wasn't interested in. That inspires you, that's a real connection. So if you do that, you participate, you study, you learn, you appreciate his thinking and his opinion, and then you follow it up by a visit to the Ohel, this is godliness and holiness in the tangible, real world. And that does continue the project and complete the mission. That is revealing godliness in this world. And there are people who appreciate this, who are not Hasidim, who never studied Hasidus, but godliness is real, holiness is real. The question is, where do you find it? And when they see it, they recognize it. There are some people who are so dull that even when they see it, they don't recognize it. So they really have to be re-educated, they have to be reintroduced to a reality that is more real than the tangible, than the physical. One of the most compelling stories that it's actually written in Hayom Yom, that the Alter Rebbe came out of his room and the Rebbetzin was speaking with other women, and obviously was speaking about their husbands, and the Rebbe heard his wife say, "Mine says," meaning my husband, "mine says so-and-so." And it struck the Rebbe very, very deeply. And after contemplating on it, the Rebbe said, "With one mitzvah I become yours." So how much are we God's with all the mitzvahs, with the mitzvahs? It's a very powerful story. What does it mean when one person can say of another person, "You are mine"? That's an awesome statement. Of course, mine doesn't mean possessive, belong to me. It's a much, much bigger, deeper meaning than that. How do you become mine? The Rebbe often used the expression, my chassid, a chassid of mine. That's a very powerful statement. But generally, the relationship between chassid and Rebbe is a unique phenomenon that needs to be studied and examined and understood. It's not maternal love, it's not filial love, it's a unique kind of love. How does that connection, how does that happen? How does it become your Rebbe? And I remember once on a Simchas Torah when the Rebbe was teaching the nigun Stav Yapitu, and the words are Ukrainian, and people were having a hard time. Even the Russians were having a hard time with the Ukrainian language. And the Rebbe kept asking, "Does anybody speak Ukrainian?" And there was really nobody responding. And right next to where I was standing, this guy got up on a table. A guy who had just recently come out of Russia. Very simple, earthy kind of a guy, no nonsense. Had never learned much. Put on tefillin for the first time when he got to New York. And he had said a few l'chaims, and he was in a good mood. And he gets up on the table, and in this huge, booming voice, he says, "L'chaim Rebbe, ihr seid mein Rebbe. You're my Rebbe." At that moment, he bonded with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe became his Rebbe. But that is a very intense, deep bond. How do you become the Rebbe's? How do you become mine? How does he become yours? How do you become his? Of course, it exists on many levels. A commitment to his purpose, a commitment to his knowledge, a commitment to his requests, responding to his will. I mean, these are all powerful connections. Particularly when the Rebbe's relationship, what he was offering, was not academic. He was not simply sharing a subject with his Chassidim, cluing them in on Chassidic concepts. The Rebbe invested himself in these relationships. Chassid wrote to the Rebbe once, back in the 60s, I think, that he had written to the Rebbe a couple of letters and he never got an answer. So did he do something that the Rebbe doesn't want to talk to him anymore, or something like that? And the Rebbe wrote back, "How can you accuse me of such a thing? How can you accuse me of such a thing when not a day goes by that I don't think of you?" Now that is an awesome statement. So it's not that the Rebbe was a professor who came and delivered a lecture and went home. Everything the Rebbe said, he invested himself in it. It meant a lot to him. It meant everything to him. And whether you understood it, heard it, appreciated it, mattered greatly. This was not an academic thing. It was a very personal and almost of a sacrifice that the Rebbe invested himself in every mimer, in every talk, in every answer, in every note that he signed. There was an investment. He made himself available. He offered himself. Like it says about the Torah, that God wrote the Torah, he was investing himself in the written word. So if somebody reaches out like that, it makes it a lot easier to respond in kind. So it's almost irresistible. You almost can't help but respond in kind. And that's why the people who came to see the Rebbe will most often say they felt that his entire attention and his entire world focused on this person, on me. And that's exhausting. So this doesn't happen by itself. It doesn't happen accidentally. This was the Rebbe's commitment, that he makes himself available. He is there in his answers, in his words, in his responses, in his look, which is another thing people always commented on, that look. So if the Rebbe makes himself so available in his teachings, in his projects, and so on, like, it's not my job to make God known in the world, it's our job. He made you feel like you're his, and he is yours. So the connection that comes from learning the Rebbe's teachings and doing the Rebbe's projects is not merely a shared project or a shared activity. There's an intimacy there. There's a very personal, subjective bond that a chassid could actually say, I'm yours, you're mine. There's one of my favorite stories, a true story, about a boy in Russia who was left in an orphanage while his mother went to get some money or food out of town. And it ended up taking longer than they planned, and he was there for a while. It was supposed to be days, it turned into weeks. Anyway, his mother had told him what he can eat and what he can't eat to keep kosher. He was 8 years old, and it was very hard for him because how does he defend himself when people say, why can't you eat this? Why can't you eat that? And but they went on a hike once, the orphanage, and it was very hot and the kids were all thirsty. So they went into a farm and they asked the farmer for a drink for the kids. And the farmer brought out a pitcher of milk, cold. Gave each kid a glass and filled the glass. And this little boy was about to drink. And he hears the farmer say to the leader, to the counselor, he said, it's good you stopped here today because This is the best thing for the children. There's nothing healthier than horse's milk. So the boy hears this, and he's, what is he going to do? First of all, he's thirsty. Second of all, what is he going to tell him? That milk is not kosher either, and then you start a whole new conversation, and he didn't want that. He didn't want the hassle. On the other hand, it's not kosher. So he went through a little internal struggle and decided he's not going to drink it. And to avoid making an issue, he made believe the glass slipped out of his hand and spilled. Now they're coming back to the orphanage. The mother had returned. And he sees his mother from a distance. And he shouts, he calls to her and he says, "Mama, I'm still yours. I didn't drink it. I didn't drink the milk. I'm still yours." The wisdom of an 8-year-old, that if you're sharing a world, a reality, if you're one with somebody, you don't step out of that picture. You don't step out of those borders. So to him, it wasn't keeping kosher because it's a mitzvah, because it's a commandment, or because it's Torah, because it was what? His mother wouldn't drink it and he will drink it. But then that breaks the bond. So when he saw her, he was able to say, "I'm yours." Not "I'm good. I'm a good boy, I didn't drink it." No, "I'm yours. That's why I didn't drink it." It's not impossible, and it's not even difficult for a person today to say to the Rebbe, "I'm still yours." If he was a chassid before, he can say, "I'm still yours." And somebody who wasn't a chassid before can say, I want to be yours. I want to be your chassid. I want to be part of your world, part of your reality. And of course, that is possible because a mother always welcomes the son to be hers. A Rebbe always welcomes a Jew to be his. And the amazing, awesome thing is that a Jew today, every Jew, if he knows he's Jewish and he tells his children he's Jewish, he can say to God, "I'm still yours. I'm not a good boy. I'm not a perfect Jew, but I'm still yours. I know I'm Jewish. I told my children we're Jewish, which means we are yours." Everybody wants that. The sense of belonging, the sense of connectedness, the sense of purpose, the sense of significance to your life. Everybody's looking for this. And the Rebbe makes it available. God provides tzaddikim and shepherds to make that possible, and that's what we need to do.